no end of history. Why? Because something is so radical is potentially happening, which I think will change maybe even our very elementary definition of what it is to be human. I refer here not only to the fact that in predictable future, it will be already possible to, through genetic manipulations, change not only our physical properties of newborn children or even adults, but especially psychological properties and attitudes. For example, my friends in China gave me a kind of a big plan of Chinese Academy of Sciences for, and they are pretty open there. They claim that their goal is, to cut a long story short, to control the entire Chinese population, its physical and mental health. You know, like to genetically, in the long term, reduce aggressivity if needed or whatever, and so on and so on. Another thing which I think has incredible consequences, even philosophical ones, is, for example, what defines us as free human beings? The fact that I am in here, in my thoughts, reality is out there. You know, this is what gives you the freedom. I can think whatever I want. This is falling apart. First comes the good news, which is that you know that scientists are already slowly, it's still very modest, but it already works, breaking the barrier between thinking and doing. For example, I saw on TV recently, I think it was in Florida, they generated a wheelchair for the crippled, where you don't even need that finger that Stephen Hawking moves a little bit. Simply, your brain is scanned, and at a very primitive level still, but nonetheless, it's the computer through electrorays and so on, magnetic, can read your basic, as it were, order attitude, these very primitive orders, forward, backwards, left, right. So you just think about it and it moves. I claim there is something terrifying in it. Why? On the one hand, you can say we become like gods. No, you think there it is. But remember, what goes out comes in. That is to say, they're already thinking, they just don't talk about it so much. How also new ways of controlling your mind. This is not a utopia, they are just doing it like crazy. I was told already United States and other armies, very primitive example. They discovered that when you are in a total panic, your brain generates certain electromagnetic waves. I simplified the story. The point is that if you generate artificially these waves and I bombard you with them, you will be in a panic. So they're already massively doing it. You no longer even need firearms. You simply bombard a certain area with these waves and so on and so on. So what I'm saying that the nightmarish prospect here is that these crucial developments in biogenetics will be either privatized or totally controlled by state. Again, it's a question of our human dignity, survival as humans, not to reactionary repress it, not to say this is devil's work, let's not do it. For that, it's too late. But again, some kind of mobilization will be needed, which is neither private capital nor simple state regulation. Now, what has all this to do with communism? Did you notice how, I would like to return here to the old Marxist notion, not only Marx, of commons, and the idea of enclosure of the commons. Commons in the sense of what should be out there as our shared substance, which belongs to all of us. That ecology deals with external nature, as air, water, what should be there to all of us. Biogenetics deals with the commons of our inner nature, genetic identity, inheritance, and intellectual property deals with our, let's call it, symbolic commons, symbolic substance. And in all these three fields, we can isolate something like a terrifying forthcoming new proletarian position. We not only have the Marxian proletarian, a proletarian from whom the product of his or her work is taken, we even have today, let's say, when you are more and more deprived of even your environment, being polluted and so on. I think it's quite reasonable to talk about some kind of ecological proletarian position. When all your intellectual media are privatized or taken from you, it's a kind of a intellectual proletarian position whose nice metaphor, although it's not a great film for me, is, you remember, Matrix, the first one at least. You know how they just lie there, their energy being sucked out of them, their thoughts controls intellectual proletarians. If your biogenetic structure is manipulated, you are genetically in a proletarian position. But now I come to the crucial point, and then I will finish. These three fields are not enough. We need a fourth crucial piece of struggle, which is, again, the old Marxist class struggle, but class struggle in an even more radical form of new apartheids. I think, globalization, in a kind of nice example of dialectics, don't ever forget that globalization in practice always also means its exact opposite. If you look to each specific country, globalization usually means the elite or part of it exploited gets globalized, the other part regresses even further back. The biggest example of perfectly globalized country would be, for me, the country where maybe the suffering, if we measure it in this primitive, quantitative way, is the greatest today, Congo, Republic of Congo, Kinshasa. It's a country which doesn't function, people have starved and so on, but at the same time, all the local warlords are connected with foreign companies. It's fully integrated, which is why it's not simply left out. The way Congo is today is fully integrated, globalized. And so did you notice how if the symbol of 89-90 was the fall of the Berlin Wall, today new walls are emerging all around. West Bank, Palestine, Mexico, United States, Europe is talking about Fortress Europe to protect from immigrants and so on and so on. I claim that the reality in each country of globalization is globalization precisely means, the way we know it, stronger divisions between those who are in, those who are out, different forms of exclusion and so on within each country. This is why, and I claim, if you don't link the other three struggles that I mentioned, ecology, biogenetic, intellectual property, to this struggle against new inner separations, divisions, exclusions, if you don't do this, then you solve nothing. For example, you can well be a reactionary ecologist, with all even the racist undertones, claiming, countries like India, Brazil, they are destroying us all, we need more elite white culture, whatever, and so on and so on. Even like biogenetics, you can be a very conservative there, claiming this is the devil's work or whatever. So what I'm claiming is that our situation is this one, how, as we all know, slums are exploding all around today, and this struggle, the key task of the left for me is to kind of establish a chain among all these struggles, to offer the struggle for the rights of those, they may be Dalits or scavengers here, excluded, to link this struggle to all other struggles. Why? Where do I see the difference between the classical Marxist notion on, and with this I will conclude, working class proletarian and our situation? Marx had a right intuition, but at the same time I think he missed the point when he developed this idea of what he called general intellect, which is the idea that with the development of productive forces, knowledge, scientific knowledge, expert knowledge becomes more and more the key factor of production. And in his Grundrisse manuscript, maybe you know, Marx even develops quickly, in a passing way, a vision of how once knowledge will become very, very important, capitalism will simply have to disintegrate because knowledge will become the main source of value. What Marx didn't take into account is the possibility of reprivatizing this general knowledge, our shared substance. This is, I think, the key to this stupid question asked in all the media: why is Bill Gates, if he still is, it all the time changes, the richest man in the world? I don't think you can play the classical Marxist game of extra profit, extra exploitation. I have an answer which I think it's still Marxist, but not the traditional one. I tend to agree with economists who claim that today capitalism is, in a way, paradoxically, up to a point, returning from profit to rent. What is Bill Gates doing? What is the source of his wealth? Why do we pay him so much for using? Because he privatized part of our intellectual commons.